Never.
No.
So you started doing sketch stuff like in Long Island?
I went to NYU for acting in 87.
I think you mean NY Jew.
I went to NYU. and
Cut
actually,
that part
I
out.
saw
Don't let
you,
the Food Network hear
I
that.
saw you doing stand-up down in the Village somewhere.
Boston Comedy Club.
That's what it was.
Next to the fire station.
Yep. And the state is basically we all met at NYU. We were all half of us were film students and half of us were theater majors.
So when was the first time you thought, okay, I got to go on stage. I have to do this. I have to be up there doing what, like when you come, when you go see live comedy. Did you think I want to do live? Because I know Michael Ian Black tours and does stand-up comedy. You always knew you were like an actor and a sketch guy.
Yeah, I didn't want to do sketch. I wanted to be an actor, and I just happened to fall into this group that at NYU was just this group that started doing sketch, and a friend of mine, David Wayne was my roommate, and he was in a sketch group that this other guy, Todd Hollebeck, who's in the state, broke away from, and he started this new group. Todd was a friend of mine, so he's like, I'm starting this comedy group. Do you want to do it? And I said yes, because I just wanted to act. And like when you're a freshman at NYU, you're not really doing plays. Like, and I wasn't aggressive enough to be like, all right, let me put a play together. Like I didn't know what So this seemed like fun. And so we got together, and he held auditions, and basically what became the state is Todd is responsible for that group, those 11 people.
Your roommate had auditions.
He wasn't my roommate. He was like a.
I was gonna say that must have been very awkward bunk time. Like, bro, seriously, how did I do?
No, but we were very good friends. I didn't have to audition essentially. Like,
Yeah.
But
I thought you were the oldest member of the state.
Todd and David and myself were the same year.
Oh, I thought
I am the oldest. I am older
like
than everybody.
Because I had like a whole. I'm like, he's like the Bill Wyman of the state, man.
No.
He's the older guy.
No. Dave and I and Todd were all sophomores, and then the rest of those guys were freshmen, and we all auditioned. But and that was like Kerry and Black and Showalter and Mike Jan and no, not Mike Janet and who else? Ben Garant and Joe Latruglio, Kevin Allison.
It's almost like this revisionist history with the state. Like when it was happening, we were all fans of it and we all knew it was great. But now, like people talk about the state, like you guys were this money-making face of MTV thing, and mostly you were. Michael Ian Black, again, I just listened to him on Mark Maron's podcast. He said it's kind of like being a pretty successful indie band is how you guys were. And I'm like, that's how I saw it.
Yeah.
But did you guys know when you were doing these sketches that the sketches were great and they were better than anything your contemporaries were doing?
I think what we liked is we were doing things that were making us laugh, and I think we were at times we were like, oh, this is kind of a fresh take on a sketch. Yeah. And then, more than half of them were just kind of, redundant or from something, felt like they were just reworked, a reworked sketch from somebody else or some other group. But then we were trying to do fresh stuff or stuff that made the other members of the group laugh. So every once in a while we stumbled upon, I think we knew like we would stumble upon something that was fresh. We didn't know if anybody else would like it, but we liked it.
But do you see what I'm talking about where people talk about the state like you guys were Nirvana in 91?
Yeah. The state has this weird...
It's gotten more successful the further time goes by.
And I think one of the reasons was it was timing. And I think Showalter, or somebody has talked about this. You couldn't get it on...
Buck Showalter.
Buck Showalter.
Yeah.
You couldn't get it on DVD, or you couldn't get a tape of it. So there were these bootlegs that were started kind of floating around when we got canceled. And so people would be like, oh, the state, yeah. And then you couldn't get it. And so people would talk it up. And then... because it was hard to get, I guess people started believing that it was something other than what it was, or maybe there are. I mean, the state is very special to me, and I think we did some fun, some really original, cool things, and then some just like kind of failed sketches. But I think what was unique about it is it was this big group who who just kind of did everything, did the whole thing, and there weren't many groups like that. And
Ken, how do you go? This is what fascinates me: is how do you go from guys that go to college together doing sketches to pitching to a network? Like who put all that together?
David Wayne, I think, was working at MTV or interning at MTV after he graduated, and most of the other guys were still in college. They were seniors, and David and myself and Todd all graduated. I went and did a play, and I was touring the country in this like tour of A Few Good Men or something. David
was it A Few Good Men for real?
It was, yeah.
That's awesome.
With do you know Josh Molina?
No.
Oh, okay. Josh Molina was in the tour. That's how I met him. I thought you knew him.
So you were up and running. You were acting, and then all of a sudden you get a call to come back because we got this other thing we might want to do on MTV. So he was an intern at MTV.
Yeah, and he pitched. There was this Jon Stewart show called You Wrote It, You Watch It, which was not like a great show, but John was the host, and he was funny, and he would read these like...
One of the best exit lines of all time. You wrote it, but you didn't watch it when it got canceled. Yeah.
But he read these letters like most embarrassing parent story. And then they had this like, they would bring in actors to act that out, and they would intercut it with him reading it or the letter itself.
Yeah.
And so David, at the time, had a video camera, and he's like, how about we go around and do man on the street things and intercut it, and the state will act it out, and then we'll intercut it with the actual person talking on the street, which is a little bit more active. You know,
and very progressive.
Well, it was kind of like YouTube, like a YouTube thing before YouTube. And so we did that. So they said, well, let's see it. And so I actually didn't do it because I was away, but they shot like 3 or 4 pieces and then handed it. And you know, we shot it, we edited it, we acted in it, and we handed it to them. And we said, this is what we would do if we were on your show. And they said, great. Okay, why don't you do 2 or 3 of those, or 1 or 2 of those per episode.
Right.
You'll be self-contained. We won't, you know, you'll supply the actors, the director, everything, and we'll pay you all like you know, $100 a week or something.
Yeah.
And then they put us in this one room, 11 of us in one room on a one-room office with no windows at 1515 Broadway.
Yeah.
And that was our first.
You made it.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and then, you know, our decision was like, and then out of that, we got our own sketch comedy show, and Stewart got his own talk show.
You studied Lee Strasberg? You studied acting with Lee Strasberg?
Not with him,
I'm sorry.
Not with him, but
right.
at his institute.
Do you think Lee Strasberg, how do you think he would feel about, I want to dip my balls in it?
I don't know how he would feel about it.
Like, very few people that go to Lee Strasberg Institute. I'll put Baba Ganoush, I'll dip my balls in it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how he would feel about it. As long as I committed to the truth of the character.
You sure did, my man. I love. I heard the story of how you guys were pestered by MTV to have recurring characters.
Yes, that was our fuck. That was our fuck you. Like, we don't want to do. We had a big chip on our shoulder for, I don't know why, but we had a chip on our shoulder. Like, we're not going to do recurring characters.
Man,
yeah, that's stupid. We're not doing it. And so they're like, well, there were 4 things that they asked us to do, like rock, you know, like rock and roll references or rock and rolls, you know, music sketches.
Networks will never cease to anybody that sits in that chair and just tells me any network thing. It's mind blowing that some douche in a suit goes, you know, it would really be good for comedy on this network is if you could mention, you know, the bands that we have on. Well, that would help you and us.
We needed to do that the first year. We needed to do that.
You could say REM.
Sick and Twisted. Yeah. I remember them using the do a Sick and Twisted sketch. You know, do Sick and Twisted sketches. Recurring characters and something else. And we were like, we're not going to do that. And
what was his name? Louis?
Louis, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the original sketch was we were going to...
so funny.
We had a whole show where we were just talking up the recurring character, this, you know, great recurring character that nobody's ever seen before, but we're talking about like he's existed forever. And at the end of the episode, there was going to be that sketch, and then we were never going to do it again. And we had Iggy Pop come on and talk about Louis in the 70s and what he was like in the 70s.
You had Iggy Pop on.
Yeah.
Oh, he had that album that just came out. It was big with Candy, 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 Candy Girl.
It's possible. I'm not. I wish I.
I know
wish
that
I knew
song
Iggy
was on
Pop
the album
more.
I'm thinking of at least. So
But
just trust me.
But it was MTV.
You.
So like we had some musicians come in and talk about Louis.
Wow.
And so we did it. And the idea was we'll never do it again. It'll just be one time. It'll be a recurring character that we only talk about for one episode. He comes on and he never does it again. And then
if I could put a pin in it, so that's actually really brilliant. So the recurringness of the guy was all past tense. Like this has been going on since the 70s.
Right.
So then you guys do it as a one-off, and you could tell the network like
we did a recurring character.
And almost like Jedi mind tricked them. Like, no, didn't you hear Iggy Pop? Like we've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Iggy Pop partied with Louis.
Yeah.
That's really brilliant.
And then we did it, and then they're like, "Hey, that's good. Do it again." And we're like, "The sketch for people who don't know what the sketch is." And there's a little story of how that it was created. But the sketch is a guy. People at a party talk about this guy. They're all bummed out. The party's kind of lame, and they're like, "When is Louis coming?" And then Louis comes, and they're like, "Louis here." And then he comes in and he asks people what they have for him.
What do you have for me?
And then they tell him. And he says, I want to dip my balls in it over and over again. And they celebrate to, like, insanity.
Even, like, piped in, like, almost vuvuzela, like, crazy noises.
They're going
like
nuts.
Applause,
they go ape shit. But
yeah.
And then I had to hold two balls.
I was going to ask you about
because of standards and practices.
Yeah, of course.
The way it came up was David Wayne, who is a member of the state, had a tendency to have his hands down his pants all the time. And he also had this eating thing where he would, like, there'd be a peanut butter jar on a desk, and he'd open up the peanut butter jar and, like, put his fingers in it and eat it.
And then right back to the hands on the pants.
Hands down the pants. And so I got pissed off one day, and I was like, Dave, why don't you just, like, cut out the middleman, just dip your balls in the peanut butter. And so then we started running around.
And then buy a bunch of hounds.
And then we started running around the office saying, I want to dip my balls in it. And we're like, that would be the stupidest catchphrase ever. That's the catchphrase. They want a catchphrase. Here's a catchphrase. And then we wrote that sketch. And then
they were horrified when they saw it and said, "You can't."
No, they saw it, and then they liked it, and they said, "Do more." And we're like, "What? Do more with what?"
Oh, I mean, but you had to you didn't know to hold those two red balls in your hand. I'm sure the first time you did it, Louis probably just said, "I'm gonna dip my balls in it," and then somebody from Standards and Practices came to you and said, "We love it, but you're gonna have to hold these balls."
Yeah, I think we sent them the script, and they're like, "What's going on?" And I think we actually might have just been like, well, Standards and Practices might have a problem with this, but what we'll do is we'll say he's holding two golf balls. I think we kind of...
You guys were all like really smart guys.
I honestly don't remember
SNL,
how the balls
and there was a couple smart guys and a couple real dummies, but it seems like all of you guys were really fucking smart. You were surrounded by smart people.
Not me. I'm the dummy of the group.
Well, then that makes everybody super smart. I love, first of all, I love any short sleeve shirt with a tie. That always makes me laugh. Yeah. So Louis has that going for him. That always makes me very happy. I also I'm a fan when sketches cross time without explanation. So I remember in particular, Neil Brennan and I were roommates briefly on St. Mark's Place, and we had one of those bootleg tapes of the state, and we watched it. We were very high, and like that, we were young and we were young. We were in love. We had a good time. It was amazing. But I remember it was the fucking Last Supper.
Louis in the Last Supper.
Louis shows up, and Thomas Lennon as Jesus made me insane. Like on mushrooms before the mushrooms kick in, laughing. Like just him, not saying it, just really literally going Judas for real. Just him speaking in the Jesus outfit made me so happy. And then who played Judas? Because it's almost like they got there late because they just threw like a bullshit like Brian Wilson beard on
like
him.
A fake, like a shitty beard.
Like everyone else is in this elaborate fake Last Supper like robes and garb and
and
like
then he's got like these kind of wiry
then Judas just was like, "We got to go now," and they just go to the gift shop at Pac Bell Park and give him like a Brian Wilson fake beard and go.
Yeah, that was.
And he goes, "What, Louis? The balls? It's funny." And I just love Louis showed up at the Last Supper.
Yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm actually proud of that one because I didn't think we could write another. Because then we wrote one We wrote the first one, and then we wrote the second one, and it was basically the same thing, because what do you do with it? But then Louis and the Last Supper actually took it
you time
somewhere else.
Yeah,
so
what do you do with it? You time travel with it.
Yeah, I was happy with that.
So there was only 3 total?
Then we had him show up in on our show, and when we did the state, we did the little connective tissue kind of
like Mr. Show
things.
before Mr. Show, the precursor to the Mr. Show format, sort of.
So he showed up, I think, in a couple, and then he was in a kabuki sketch, where all the recurring characters did kabuki theater.
I would want the state to come back just so I could be in a writer's room and